welcome to Cover Story. This week we are taking a look at the life and times of Donald J. Trump, the President of the United States. Now that is a post that is often euphemistically described as belonging to the most powerful man in the world. And that man currently is Donald Trump, a man who is often trivialized by the media as just the Donald. What is Donald Trump all about? Is he able to live up to his high office? We're going to be taking a look at his last 6 months in office and try and answer this question. Donald Trump is many things to many people. One thing he most certainly is not, and that is boring, whether on Twitter or in real life. Let's take a look at his most recent controversy, his reaction to the terror attack in London. As soon as word of the terror attack broke, the US President took to Twitter to offer his thoughts. And as the CNN editor-at-large put it, did he tweet to offer his condolences or issue a strong message on US commitment to the war against terror? Not quite. Instead, he issued 5 tweets to further his own agenda on his pet travel ban and also stirred a whole new controversy by misunderstanding the London mayor. Just take a look at this tweet. At least 7 dead and 48 wounded in terror attacks, and the mayor of London says there is no need to be alarmed. This tweet was in response to the mayor Sadiq Khan's statement where he had stated that Londoners will see an increased police presence over the course of next few days, but there was no need to be alarmed. Islamic terror has been a huge bugbear with him, and one he rode to power on with his rhetoric of talking tough on terror. One of his first few actions was to invoke the travel ban, where he blocked immigrants and visa holders from 7 countries, Iraq, Iran, Syria, Libya, Yemen, Somalia and Sudan, from entering the US for 90 days. There was much confusion around this order, for it applied not just to first-time immigrants but also to green card holders from these countries who were permanent residents of the US. But Trump has used the London attack to once again push his case, claiming, of course via a tweet or else, the Justice Department should have stayed with the original travel ban and not the watered-down, politically correct version they submitted to the Supreme Court.
Now, when you come to the actual question of the Muslim ban, it's called a Muslim travel ban, but in fact, it does not include any of the countries that have been involved in any of the attacks inside America in the last, since 9/11. Saudi Arabia is not on the ban. Practically, I think 17 of the 19 9/11 attackers had affiliations to Saudi Arabia. You don't have any of the other countries like, UAE, Kuwait, Qatar. None of those are on the ban. The countries that are on the ban are in fact countries like Libya, countries like Iraq. Now, these are countries that America has intervened in, that America has attacked at various points. So it's actually just a sort of way of appealing to his domestic audience, and I think we have to understand it in that concept.
Trump has also sparked off a debate as to what is politically correct and what is not. During the 1990s and again over the last few years, the United States has been engaged in an intense, wide-ranging argument about the contested concept of political correctness. For its most incisive critics, political correctness was a problem insofar as it elevated deference to political sensibilities. It also began to be known as a phenomena that catered to the political left. Part of Trump's charm was that he didn't mince his words while dealing with vested interests that put global rights over American interests. He would, as he said, put America first, build protective walls around American jobs, and ban those who threatened the American homeland.
Trump, not just after he became president, but even during the campaign, mounted an assault on political correctness. Not just Trump, but even his voters said we are tired of PC leaders and PC debates, and that kind of covered the media or the liberal politicians. There is, not just in America or India, there is an impatience and public exhaustion with PC debates around the world, and this is reflecting in people choosing more muscular, more strong leaders who will not mince words. And it has a lot to do with the rise of Islamist terrorism and the failure or the perceived failure of politicians, failure of politicians from naming the enemy almost.
Mr. Trump is not using that just to attack those groups. He's using it to say to everybody else that I will attack you unless you say what I'm saying, right? So when he goes after what he calls the left liberals, or when he goes after people affiliated to the Democrats, what he's essentially saying is, I will decide the discourse, I will tell you what should be said, and if you don't say it, you will be held to account. We see it in India too. A lot of the times, whenever there's a question, whenever there's an attack somewhere, whenever there's a stone pelting incident in Jammu and Kashmir, what is the question that the ruling party asks? So what is the question that your channels ask? It is always, why are the liberals silent? Where are the peaceniks today? So the discourse is being moved by this use of the term political correctness, by saying we are not responsible for keeping law and order. Mr. Trump is not responsible for ensuring gun control or to ensure safety of people going to a disco in America. The people who are responsible are the people who are politically correct. That's what he wants to convey through using this term.
It could be argued that the same right-wing train of thought that puts nation first has been responsible for the rise of Donald Trump and also for the rise of Prime Minister Modi back home. But that is where the similarity ends, because Prime Minister Modi is certainly acting in a more statesman-like manner than candidate Modi. However, Trump's presidency has only accentuated his campaign with exclamation marks. Let's take a look at the Trump-Modi equation. During his campaign, Trump had reached out to the Indian Prime Minister, even attending meets organized by the Indian diaspora, claiming that he was a big fan of Hindus.
Under a Trump administration, we are going to become even better friends. In fact, I'll take the word even out, because we are going to be best friends. There won't be any relationship more important to us.
Both Modi and Trump belong to that strongman democracy phenomenon that we are seeing around the world. Both of them have portrayed themselves as outsiders to established political structures in their capitals. In Modi's case, they talked about, cleaning up Lutyens' Delhi. In Trump's case, they kept talking about draining the swamp, which is the Washington capital. Both of them look at it as, we have come here to dismantle established politically correct debates. Both see themselves as alpha male muscular leaders, or the public sees them as alpha male muscular leaders. I think they will get along on certain levels, but I think the similarities kind of end there. I think Modi is very different a leader from Trump. Modi measures every word. His speeches, his campaign speeches, everything is very carefully choreographed spectacles, whereas Trump is just shooting off the hip.
This was not the first time that Trump had reached out to Modi. During a visit to India to invest in real estate, Trump had lent his brand Trump Towers to projects in Pune and Mumbai for luxurious apartment complexes. During these visits, he made it a point to praise Modi.
The new Prime Minister has done an incredible job. I'm talking to somebody looking in and, sort of an outsider looking in. I will say that he has done a unification job in India that hasn't been done, as you know, in many years. And outsiders look to India, and I think you're going to have a lot of investment coming in.
But of course, that was before he became president and asked for a reduction on H-1B visas for IT workers.
I think the places where you may see a clash between the two leaders is in places where both find their own domestic constituencies being hurt. So if Mr. Modi feels that the clampdown on the visas, or the cut in funding, or the stop in business coming to India is going to hurt his domestic constituency, or if he feels, for example, that the xenophobia that we see sometimes in the US now, which has led to attacks on Indians, are having an impact back home, then there will be a clash of sorts. Similarly for Mr. Trump, if he feels that back home India is in any way seen in a negative light, he may not walk the extra mile, as we have seen Mr. Obama do, that despite India having problems economically, socially, in human rights spheres, Mr. Obama certainly overcame those and reached out to India. You may not see Mr. Trump doing that.
And more recently, there is the Paris climate change controversy. While announcing last week that the US will pull out of the climate change agreement signed in 2015, Trump said that it compromised his country's interests and claimed that Delhi will be paid billions and billions of dollars to meet its commitment to combating climate change in the accord that was agreed upon by nearly 200 countries.
India will be allowed to double its coal production by 2020. Think of it. India can double their coal production. We're supposed to get rid of ours.
The United States is second only to China in terms of carbon emission. But it had been President Trump's pre-election promise to cancel the Paris deal within 100 days of becoming president as part of an effort to boost US oil and coal industries. An angry India was quick to react. For climate change is the topic close to PM Modi's heart. He has even authored a book on the subject. Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj was fielded to the media to firmly denounce Trump's allegation that in signing the historic Paris Climate Accord, India had reaped billions of dollars.
भारत ने पेरिस समझौते पर हस्ताक्षर ना तो किसी देश के दबाव में किए थे और ना किसी देश के पैसे के लालच में किए थे। ये लोभ के कारण किए गए हस्ताक्षर नहीं है, ये भय के कारण किए गए हस्ताक्षर नहीं है, ये हमारी पर्यावरण के प्रति प्रतिबद्धता के कारण किए हुए हस्ताक्षर।
Today, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, announced his decision to withdraw the United States from the Paris Agreement. I do respect this decision, but I do think it is an actual mistake, both for the US and for our planet.
What is interesting, however, is how the two leaders, Modi and Trump, use social media to directly communicate with the public over the heads of the traditional media. Both are known to have an antagonistic relationship with traditional media and seem more comfortable with the one-way communication offered by social media. Both have over 3 crore followers, but the similarity ends here. While Modi uses social media more as a medium for policy announcements and social outreach, Trump uses it as a way to wage proxy wars against his many adversaries, the media included, whom he often labels as harbingers of fake news.
The president is the most effective messenger on his agenda, and I think his use of social media, he now has a collective total of close to 110 million people across different platforms, gives him an opportunity to speak straight to the American people, which has proved to be a very, very effective tool.
Using it and using it wisely can be two different things.
Right, and I think the same people who are critiquing his use of it now critiqued it during the election, and it turned out pretty well for him then.
Are President Trump's tweets considered official White House statements?
Well, the president is the president of the United States, so they're considered official statements by the president of the United States.
Both Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Donald Trump come from a position of extreme contempt for the mainstream media. They both view it with huge suspicion. They look at it as an island of political correctness, something that's antithetical to their politics, something that's antithetical to national security, many of their debates as being antithetical to national security. And they have both successfully tried to bypass the mainstream media and use Twitter as their preferred medium of communication. Modi has in the past described mainstream media as news traders. Trump, day in and day out, calls them fake news. They have both successfully pushed the traditional media into a corner and used Twitter. Both have been criticized for not condemning domestic hate crimes enough through Twitter, whereas being very quick to condemn Islamist terror attacks around the world and domestically. And the Portland hate crime recently, Trump took his own time to condemn it or to comment on it on Twitter. Whereas if it's London attack or any other attack, he immediately takes on Twitter and he uses those tweets, what should normally have been usual tweets of condemnation, routine tweets of condemnation, he uses it to further his own domestic political agenda.
Well, I think what we have seen in the last 3 years of Mr. Modi and the last 6 months of Mr. Trump, the way they tweet is not similar. Their language is not similar. They are not tweeting for the same purposes, perhaps. When it comes to Mr. Modi, it's been much more to reach out to his Twitter population, to put out stories about the government's programs and all the rest of that. When it comes to Trump, He's speaking very directly to his voter. One of the reasons for that is Mr. Modi's Twitter population does not represent the larger voting population as much as Mr. Trump's Twitter population does, simply because of the amount that internet has been able to infiltrate, or how much the internet is present in both countries. But there is one similarity, and that is that both leaders have made it amply clear that they don't believe that the mainstream media or directly speaking to the media actually does them any good. And neither of them give interviews to journalists they don't like. Neither of them speaks, actually takes questions when they don't need to. Mr. Trump had one press conference. I'm not sure he's going to have another one. Mr. Modi has had no press conferences at all. So in fact, what they're doing by using social media and using it quite so effectively is saying that the mainstream media doesn't count. They don't see a place for the fourth estate.
It's not just that Trump is using Twitter to surpass traditional media. He's also using social media to attack traditional media.
Yes, from the very start, I think the media has had a very hostile and bitter relationship with Donald Trump. Even during the campaign, newspapers were kept out of the campaign meetings. CNN and Washington Post were singled out for that treatment because of their coverage of Trump. In fact, I remember seeing pictures of empty chairs at his campaign rallies, which would just say Washington Post, very clearly saying we are not allowing these people in. And even after he came to power, the media has not backed down, and they continue to step up their criticism. But he has also used those criticism to portray the media as if it's a barrier in his efforts to strengthen national security.
Well, we need to take a short break, but after the break, we're going to come back and continue taking a look at the Donald. Welcome back to Cover Story. This week we are taking a look at Donald Trump, his life on social media, his relationship with traditional media, and also his relationship with the rest of the world. Trump's foreign travels have been equally entertaining. He surprised everyone by choosing Saudi Arabia as his first port of call. This was not just it. Soon after his visit, Saudi Arabia and three of its biggest allies, Egypt, the UAE and Bahrain, all announced that they were severing domestic ties with Qatar. Qatar is home to the forward headquarters of the United States Central Command, which manages all military operations in Afghanistan and the Middle East. For this reason alone, US diplomats tried to play down the boycott, appealing for calm and dialogue. But not Trump. In fact, through successive tweets, he actually took credit for nudging the Saudi decision. So good to see that the Saudi Arabia visit with the king is already paying off, he tweeted, referring to his visit to the country some weeks back.
What I think you're seeing is that Mr. Trump is finding his feet in the world. He has found his feet as a business leader, no matter what you think of how he ran his business empire. He's now finding his feet in the actual geopolitical stratosphere with other leaders. Saudi Arabia should have been an easy one for him in terms of the fact that as a businessman, he knows how to deal with the Saudi leadership. I think his appearance at the sword dance, no matter how criticized it is, was actually a stroke of genius, because it showed that he was able to relate to another culture, something he'd been criticized for before. The fallout when you talk about what's happened in Qatar is not necessarily immediately because of Mr. Trump, but I think it was an emboldening of the Saudi royalty, because he went to Saudi Arabia first, because he allowed King Salman to hold this massive conference of all the Muslim leadership, including from our neighborhood as well, over there, and to reaffirm what was seen as a slightly shaky leadership of the Islamic world. Mr. Trump gave the Saudi royalty the confidence it required to carry out an action like this.
There has also been much speculation about his awkward body language, whether it is his lunge and grasp handshake, or his macho grasping of Macron's hand, or the rebuff given to none other than his wife when he tried to reach out for her hand. Or then of course there is the time when he apparently ignored Angela Merkel's outreach, and of course his shoving aside of a NATO leader just so he could get into a front position for a group photo. What makes the world's most powerful man so socially awkward? Perhaps his past. For nothing screams awkward more than the photo op between Donald Trump and Pope Francis at the Vatican.
I'm not a real psychologist, so I can only say as a journalist who's watched a lot of leaders, I think what's happening is we are getting more and more up close with our leadership. With Mr. Trump, every moment is being recorded, and recorded, I would say, with a slightly negative eye. I mean, the media is making a point of catching every little nuance. The refused handshake to Angela Merkel, for example, has been so closely analyzed, whereas people who were in the room at the time said he just got distracted and wasn't looking at what he didn't mean to be rude. So I will say that most leaders tend to be loners. And that is the paradox, that you can be powerful, you can be popular, you can have the common touch, but you can essentially be loners. And that's why the body language comes across as awkward, especially in those confined and closed spaces. I also have to say, somewhere there, leaders realize that in this world, in the social media world, that it doesn't really matter what's being said about you, so long as something is being said about you.
And finally back to his Twitter page, for that is really becoming his most articulate governance tool. But recently he found yet another use for his Twitter timeline, to coin new words. Just before midnight in Washington on 31st May, Trump baffled his followers by tweeting, "Despite the negative press kerfuffle, having tweeted this, he went off to sleep, leaving the rest of the world to figure what exactly he meant and whether this was just a typo." Which is what any normal cop-out should have been, but not for Trump. The next day at 6 AM, he deleted that and replaced it with another tweet. Who can figure out the true meaning of kerfuffle? Enjoy.
Covfefe. I don't know, it maybe sounds like sort of Italian.
Oh, do you think it's covfefe?
I think it's covfefe.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it sounds better.
A covfefe is a Yiddish term for I gotta go to bed now.
It just is a reflection of how unforgiving the media scrutiny is, or the public scrutiny is on Trump. It's a typo. He meant to type coverage and ended up typing something else. It shows that he uses Twitter to rant, and he doesn't really think. There's no filter. He doesn't think, and he just presses. He's very Twitter happy, typos, Twitter typos are, the digital footprints of almost every person who uses social media.
Well, not having access to Trump's particular brand of thesaurus, words fail us as we try and envisage what he has in store for us for the next 4 years. But one thing is certain, these years certainly won't be boring. And we can only hope that they won't be apocalyptic. But that's it from us. Thank you for watching this show. We'll see you again same time next week.